Superman made over $600 million worldwide. Critics liked it, audiences liked it, and Warner Brothers still barely broke even on it. Read that again? Their flagship character, the most recognizable superhero on the planet, fronted a movie that only just cleared a profit. That's not a hot take. That's just the math. And 2 years into James Gunn running DC Studios, that same math keeps showing up project after project. So here's the question this video actually answers. Is the DCU failing, or is it just going through exactly what every shared universe has to go through before it earns the right to be trusted? I'll say the contradictory part up front. I think this universe survives long term. I also think it is right now in worse shape than most casual fans realize. Both of those can be true at once, and by the end of this, you'll see why they don't cancel each other out. Start with Superman, because the framing around this movie has gotten way too rosy. Budget was $225 million before marketing. Global gross landed at $618 million. On paper, that made it the highest grossing superhero movie of 2025. But the unwritten rule in this industry is that a blockbuster needs to clear roughly double its production budget just to be considered profitable once marketing, theater cuts, and overhead get factored in. Superman cleared that bar. Barely. Compare that to how Marvel actually built trust. Iron Man didn't have a built-in audience waiting for it. It built one from scratch. By the time Endgame happened, Marvel could release a movie about a talking raccoon in a tree, and people would show up opening weekend without blinking. That kind of loyalty took years and a long streak of genuine wins to earn. James Gunn is trying to spend Marvel-sized budgets on a universe that hasn't put in anywhere close to Marvel time. Then there's Peacemaker Season 2, which should have been an easy victory lap. Rotten Tomatoes had it sitting in the high 90s. Critics were genuinely thrilled with it. But here's the number that matters more. According to Samba TV's household tracking data, the Season 2 premiere actually beat the Season 1 finale by about 22%. Strong start. Then, by the time the finale aired, viewership had dropped nearly 40% from that premiere number. That's not a disaster, but it's a pattern worth noticing. A show can earn glowing reviews and still lose a huge chunk of its audience halfway through the season. And the finale, which strands Peacemaker in a strange new dimension called Salvation, was clearly written to set up future DCU storylines. The problem is, fewer people were actually watching by the time it happened. Which brings us to this week. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow has officially opened, and it is not the bounce back DC Studios needed. On a budget north of $170 million, it opened domestically around $40 million. For context, that's lower than The Flash's opening back in 2023. A movie that's basically shorthand in fan circles for DC misstep. Rotten Tomatoes has it sitting in the high 50s, just above Wonder Woman 1984 and below The Flash. Not great company. I want to be fair here because the source material is genuinely excellent. This is an adaptation of Tom King and Bilquis Evely's Woman of Tomorrow comic, one of the better Superman family stories of the last decade. A strange cosmic road trip rather than a standard origin tale. Millie Alcock, fresh off House of the Dragon, has gotten real praise for the performance specifically. Most of the early word-of-mouth points at the tone and pacing as the issue, not the cast. But word-of-mouth doesn't pay back a budget that reportedly needs to clear around $300 million worldwide just to break even, and industry reporting suggests Warner Brothers would call anything past that mark a relief, not a triumph. So 2.5 projects into this universe, the scoreboard reads one clear win that barely cleared profit, one critically loved show that lost a third of its audience, and one movie underperforming in theaters as I'm putting this together. Before we even get to the next movie, there's a TV detour worth flagging. Lanterns, the HBO series starring Aaron Pierre and Kyle Chandler, lands in August. And it's quietly become one of the more anticipated DCU projects precisely because it isn't trying to be the next blockbuster. It's a smaller, more grounded cop drama take on the Green Lantern Corps. And if it lands well, it buys this universe some goodwill heading into the fall, which is exactly why 2027 matters more than anything that's happened up to this point. Man of Tomorrow is the true Superman sequel, written and directed by Gunn himself, bringing back David Corenswet alongside Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor, with Lars Eidinger stepping in as Brainiac. This is the project built specifically to prove Superman wasn't a fluke. If audiences come back in force for this one, the foundation holds. If they don't, This universe has produced exactly one real hit in 4 years of trying. And then there's the character this universe still doesn't have at all. Batman. The Brave and the Bold was announced back in January of 2023. Andy Muschietti is still attached to direct, and Christina Hodson came aboard to rework the script earlier this year. As of right now, there is still no actor cast. And Gunn has said plainly that casting talk won't happen until the script is one he's fully satisfied with. He's also confirmed something fans haven't fully clocked yet. He's deliberately holding off on launching this version of Batman until after Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2 hits theaters in October of 2027. Specifically so two very different live-action Batmen aren't competing for the same attention at the same time. Translate that. The single biggest character in DC's entire library, arguably bigger than Superman in terms of pure global brand recognition, won't even have a face attached to him for at least another 2 years into this universe's life. That is an enormous gap to leave open while you're trying to convince casual moviegoers this universe is worth following. On top of all of this, there's a corporate earthquake happening in the background that nobody asked for. Warner Bros. Discovery agreed to be acquired by Paramount Skydance earlier this year, a deal valued at roughly $110 billion, including debt. Shareholders approved it in April. It's expected to officially close sometime this year, pending regulatory clearance. And buried inside that uncertainty is a question that should worry DC fans more than any single box office number. Does James Gunn even keep his job once new ownership takes over? The reporting is genuinely split. Some insiders say Gunn and Peter Safran stay exactly where they are, running DC Studios the same way they have been. Other reports claim the opposite, that once the deal officially closes, Gunn is out. Nobody outside a small circle of executives actually knows right now, and that uncertainty alone probably explains a few of the decisions we've talked about. If you genuinely don't know whether you'll still be running this universe in a year, you don't slow play your slate. You greenlight everything you possibly can while you still have the authority to do it. That, by the way, is reportedly part of why the long-rumored Amanda Waller series has hit turbulence behind the scenes, alongside Swamp Thing and Teen Titans, both of which remain stuck without release dates of their own. So here's my real position, and it's a little different from the doom and gloom takes you'll find elsewhere. I don't think the core problem with the DCU is quality. Creature Commandos was well reviewed, Peacemaker was well reviewed. Even Supergirl, mixed as it is, isn't being called a bad movie by most critics who've seen it. The actual problem is trust, and trust isn't something you can write into a script. It only gets built one way, by audiences showing up, having a good time, and coming back next time without being asked twice. Marvel earned that over roughly 6 years and a dozen movies before Endgame ever happened. James Gunn is trying to compress that same process into a third of the time, on similar budgets, with characters that don't carry anywhere near the built-in recognition Iron Man and Captain America eventually earned. That's not necessarily a fatal mistake. It just means the next 18 months matter enormously. Clayface needs to find an audience in a genre that doesn't usually cross over with capes. Man of Tomorrow needs to prove Superman wasn't a one-time win. And somebody eventually needs to actually cast Batman. If even 2 of those 3 things go right, I think this universe gets through its growing pains and becomes exactly what Gunn originally promised. A strange, interconnected library of stories that doesn't all look and sound the same. If none of them go right, we're not talking about a course correction anymore. We're talking about a second reboot before this one even finishes its first chapter. That's where things actually stand right now, and for what it's worth, my money is still on this universe surviving. But I want to know where you land. Drop your prediction in the comments. Tell me if Clayface is the movie that turns this around, or if you think the cracks are already too deep to patch before Man of Tomorrow even gets here. If you want the next breakdown the moment new numbers or casting news drops, subscribe, because this story is nowhere close to finished.